March 14, 1944. Tachikawa Airfield, Western Tokyo. Dawn breaks through industrial smoke, casting copper light across hangars where the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service has assembled its most brilliant minds. The sound of metal on metal echoes through concrete halls. Engineers measuring, calculating, photographing. In the center of Hangar 7 sits a captured American fighter, its silver skin reflecting morning light like a mirror of impossible dreams. P-51D Mustang, serial number 4413410. Shot down over Iwo Jima, recovered intact, transported here as if it were a religious artifact containing forbidden knowledge. Colonel Takeo Yamashita stands before it, notebook trembling in his hands. He has designed fighters for 15 years. The Ki-43 Hayabusa, nimble as wind. The Ki-44 Shoki, powerful as thunder. He believed Japanese engineering superior, believed American machines crude and heavy, believed Bushido spirit compensated for any material disadvantage. Now he stares at this aluminum contradiction, this sleek impossibility that climbs higher, flies faster, ranges farther than anything Japan possesses. His certainty begins to crack like porcelain dropped on stone. The war he understood is becoming something else entirely. The examination begins with religious intensity. 30 engineers, 5 aerodynamicists, 12 metallurgists, 6 propulsion specialists. They work in shifts, 20 hours daily, sleeping on cots between measurements. Every rivet cataloged, every panel traced onto rice paper, every dimension recorded in ledgers that pile like sacred texts. The Mustang weighs 100 pounds fully loaded, yet outperforms Japanese fighters weighing 6,000. It carries 6 50 caliber machine guns, yet remains faster than the lightly armed Ki-43. It flies 650 miles with drop tanks. Japanese fighters struggle past 900. These numbers violate everything Colonel Yamashita learned at Tokyo Imperial University, everything the technical journals proclaimed, everything propaganda promised about American industrial inferiority. The engine mystifies them most. Packard Merlin, Phi 1657, 12 cylinders arranged in 60-degree V configuration, 2-stage 2-speed supercharger, liquid cooling system with radiator matrix positioned beneath the fuselage. The engineering is not crude. It is sophisticated beyond anything Nakajima or Kawasaki produces. Japanese engines rely on air cooling, simpler manufacturing, lighter weight. But this liquid-cooled monster generates 1,490 horsepower at 3,000 RPM, sustaining power at altitudes where Japanese engines suffocate and die. The supercharger design alone represents metallurgical achievements Japan cannot replicate. Alloys that withstand temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius without warping. Precision manufacturing tolerances measured in thousandths of millimeters. Lieutenant Hiroshi Matsuda, youngest of the aerodynamics team, spends 16 hours studying the wing profile. He photographs it from 40 angles, creates plaster molds, calculates chord-to-thickness ratios. The airfoil shape appears deceptively simple, yet wind tunnel tests reveal something extraordinary. The laminar flow wing design maintains smooth airflow over 70% of chord length, reducing drag by nearly 40% compared to conventional profiles. This single innovation explains why the Mustang cruises at 380 miles per hour, while Japanese fighters struggle past 330. Matsuda writes in his journal, "We have been fighting the sky itself incorrectly. They understood something fundamental we missed, but understanding and replicating diverge like parallel tracks never meeting. Japan's aluminum supply dwindles daily. American submarines strangle shipping routes, cutting off bauxite from Dutch East Indies. Precision machine tools wear beyond repair. No replacements coming. No steel for manufacturing new ones. The scientists who could develop advanced superchargers died at Midway, Guadalcanal, Rabaul. The industrial base that might produce such engines burns nightly under B-29 raids. They possess the blueprint for transcendence. They lack the material foundation to build it." April 1944. The replication project receives official designation, Ki-100 Advanced Fighter Development Program. Imperial General Headquarters allocates resources with desperate optimism, steel quotas, aluminum reserves, technical personnel transferred from other projects. Colonel Yamashita knows they cannot duplicate the Mustang exactly. Japan lacks the industrial capacity, the material science, the manufacturing precision. But perhaps they can capture its essence, translate its principles into achievable Japanese engineering. Build not a copy but an adaptation, a Mustang that Japanese factories might actually produce. The first compromise cuts deep. The Packard Merlin engine cannot be replicated. Its complexity demands manufacturing capabilities Japan lost 2 years ago. Instead, they must adapt the Mitsubishi HA-112-2 radial engine, 14 cylinders arranged in star pattern, air-cooled, generating 1,500 horsepower, close to Merlin's output theoretically. But radial engines create massive frontal area, destroying the sleek aerodynamics that make the Mustang untouchable. Engineer Kenji Tanaka calculates that frontal drag will reduce maximum speed by 60 miles per hour minimum. Yamashita approves anyway. There is no alternative. The laminar flow wing proves equally problematic. Its magic depends on manufacturing precision Japan cannot maintain. Surface smoothness within 0.002 inches tolerance across entire wing area. Rivet heads flush within 0.001 inches. Panel joints seamless, invisible to airflow. Japanese factories, bombed repeatedly, operating with worn tools and exhausted workers, cannot achieve such perfection. Test wings emerge rough, irregular, destroying laminar flow before aircraft leaves ground. Matsuda watches wind tunnel smoke swirl into turbulence at 20% chord length instead of 70. The dream dies in visible proof. They strip away features one by one, each deletion a small surrender. The 6-gun armament becomes 4. Ammunition supplies cannot support sustained firing. The 1,650-mile range shrinks to 1,000. Fuel production cannot meet demand. The sophisticated radio equipment becomes basic vacuum tube sets. Electronics components vanish from supply chains. The pressurized cockpit disappears entirely. Rubber seals unavailable. Compressor systems too complex. Each compromise makes sense individually. Together they transform the project from Mustang replication into something else entirely. A conventional fighter wearing Mustang's ghost-like ill-fitting clothes. Major Takashi Ito, production liaison from Kawasaki Heavy Industries, delivers the cruelest news in May. Even this compromised design cannot enter mass production before 1946. Raw material shortages, bombing damage, labor exhaustion, transportation collapse. The industrial ecosystem necessary for fighter construction disintegrates faster than engineers can adapt. They are designing aircraft for a nation that may not exist when blueprints become reality. The psychological impact spreads through Tachikawa like radiation from an invisible source. Engineers who spent careers believing Japanese aviation superior now confront mathematical proof of delusion. The Mustang's performance advantages are not marginal. They are categorical, fundamental, insurmountable with available resources. Captain Yoshiro Nakamura, who designed the Ki-43's wing structure, stops eating. He sits in the hangar at night, staring at the captured Mustang, whispering calculations that no longer add up. His faith in Japanese technical supremacy was not mere propaganda. It was the foundation of his professional identity. Now that foundation crumbles and he cannot find solid ground beneath, some retreat into denial. Lieutenant Colonel Masao Fujita insists American performance claims are exaggerated, that actual combat conditions will reveal Mustang weaknesses, that Japanese pilot skill compensates for any material disadvantage. He writes reports emphasizing the Mustang's vulnerabilities: limited maneuverability at low speeds, heavy control forces in tight turns, vulnerability to coordinated attacks by nimble Japanese fighters. These observations are technically accurate. They are also irrelevant. The Mustang fights at altitudes and speeds where Japanese fighters cannot reach, escorts bombers Japanese interceptors cannot stop, dominates aerial combat through sheer performance superiority that renders traditional tactics obsolete. Others embrace harsh clarity. Lieutenant Matsuda begins documenting not just what they learned from the Mustang, but why Japan could never have built it even with complete knowledge. His reports read like autopsies of national industrial policy. Japan's decision to prioritize quantity over quality in 1941, producing many adequate fighters rather than few excellent ones. The failure to invest in metallurgical research when peacetime economy might have afforded it. The emphasis on maneuverability and dogfighting doctrine when war's evolution demanded speed and altitude. The refusal to acknowledge American industrial capacity until too late for adaptation. Each insight cuts deeper than enemy bullets. Colonel Yamashita reads these reports in his office overlooking the airfield. Through windows, he watches Ki-43 fighters take off for missions they likely will not survive. inadequate speed, insufficient altitude, hopeless disadvantage against Mustang-escorted bomber formations. Young pilots who believe Bushido spirit conquers material reality. He believed it too once. The Mustang sitting in Hangar 7 represents something more devastating than military defeat. It reveals the intellectual and industrial failures that made defeat inevitable. They did not lose because Americans fought better. They lost because Americans built better, understood physics more deeply, organized production more effectively. The war was decided in design bureaus and factories long before first shot fired. June 1944. Test flights begin with prototypes designated Ki-100I. The aircraft incorporates what lessons Japanese engineering could actually implement: improved wing profile within manufacturing tolerances, strengthened fuselage structure, redesigned cooling systems for the radial engine. Test pilot Major Saburo Endo climbs into cockpit with mixture of hope and dread. He has flown Mustangs captured in Philippines, knows intimately what Japanese pilots face. If this aircraft closes even half the performance gap, it might save hundreds of lives. He advances throttle, rolls down Tachikawa's concrete runway, pulls back stick. The Ki-100 climbs smoothly, engine roaring with satisfying power. At 5,000 meters altitude, he levels off, checks instruments, begins performance testing. Maximum speed, 360 miles per hour at optimal altitude, better than Ki-43, equal to Ki-44. But still 20 miles per hour slower than Mustang. Climb rate, 3,000 feet per minute. Respectable, but Mustang climbs at 3,500. Service ceiling, 11,000 meters. Adequate, but Mustang operates comfortably at 12,500 meters, where Japanese fighters struggle for oxygen and power. The handling characteristics reveal deeper truths. The Ki-100 maneuvers beautifully at low speeds, responsive, nimble, forgiving of pilot errors. This is Japanese design philosophy expressed in aluminum and steel. Create aircraft that excel in close combat, that amplify pilot skill through agility and lightness. But modern aerial warfare has moved beyond dogfighting romanticism. The Mustang's heavy controls at low speeds are not flaws. They are consequences of design optimized for high-altitude, high-speed combat where wars are actually won. The Ki-100's nimbleness is tactical excellence optimized for strategic irrelevance. Endo lands, writes his report with brutal honesty. The Ki-100 is the finest fighter Japanese industry can currently produce. It is also insufficient for the war we are fighting. We have built an exquisite sword for a battlefield dominated by rifles. Colonel Yamashita reads this, feels something break inside. They achieved their goal, created a production-feasible aircraft incorporating Mustang principles within Japanese industrial constraints. And it changes nothing. The mathematics of aerial combat admit no compromise. A fighter that is 20% slower, climbs 20% lower, ranges 20% shorter, does not perform 20% worse. It becomes categorically ineffective. The Mustang can choose engagement or escape at will. It can attack from altitude and speed Japanese fighters cannot match. It can escort bombers throughout their missions while Japanese interceptors exhaust fuel reserves. The margin of inferiority is not a gap to be bridged through courage or skill. It is an abyss that swallows pilots whole. Behind the technical project, a parallel intelligence operation unfolds. The Kempeitai, military police, task special units with investigating how America achieved such aeronautical supremacy. Captain Tomohiro Saito leads a team analyzing captured documents, interrogating prisoners, piecing together the organizational and intellectual infrastructure behind the Mustang's creation. What they discover proves more disturbing than any performance statistic. The P-51 emerged not from isolated genius but from systematic, coordinated industrial scientific collaboration, unlike anything Japan attempted. North American Aviation designed the airframe. Packard Motors manufactured the British-designed Merlin engine under license, improving it beyond original specifications. The National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, provided wind tunnel research, airfoil design data, aerodynamic testing facilities. Universities contributed metallurgical research, propulsion theory, manufacturing innovations. The entire American industrial academic complex functioned as single organism directed toward clearly defined objectives. Japanese aviation development followed opposite path. Army and Navy maintained separate competing fighter programs, refusing to share research or coordinate specifications. Nakajima and Mitsubishi guarded proprietary knowledge jealously. Universities operated independently, disconnected from military priorities. No central coordination, no shared data repositories, no systematic wind tunnel research program. Individual brilliance achieved remarkable results, but isolated brilliance cannot compete against institutionalized excellence. Saito's reports document structural failures that technology cannot fix. Japan's education system emphasized rote memorization and hierarchy over creative problem-solving. Engineering curricula taught 19th-century principles while Americans pioneered boundary layer theory, compressibility effects, high-speed aerodynamics. Research funding concentrated on immediate tactical problems rather than fundamental science. The intellectual soil from which Mustang grew simply does not exist in Japan, and cannot be cultivated during wartime desperation. The intelligence analysis extends to industrial organization. American aircraft factories operate with assembly line precision, interchangeable parts, statistical quality control, specialized machine tools, workers trained in specific tasks to high proficiency, engineers freed to focus on design rather than manufacturing supervision, supply chains coordinated nationally, raw materials allocated efficiently, transportation infrastructure robust despite wartime demands. Japanese factories rely on craftsman-style production, skilled workers hand-fitting parts, constant improvisation compensating for inadequate tooling, engineers perpetually troubleshooting production problems rather than advancing designs. Saito's final report arrives at devastating conclusion. Japan could not have built the P-51 Mustang even if given complete blueprints in 1935, with a decade to prepare. The aircraft is not merely a technical achievement, but a product of economic system, educational philosophy, industrial organization, and scientific infrastructure Japan fundamentally lacks. Copying the machine without copying the civilization that produced it is like placing engine in ox cart and expecting automobile performance. The failure is not of will or courage. It is categorical, civilizational, irreversible within any time frame relevant to war's outcome. August 1944. The moral weight descends on Tachikawa like physical pressure. Colonel Yamashita sits in meetings with generals who demand production schedules, deployment timelines, reassurances that new fighters will turn the tide. He provides data they want to hear while knowing it means nothing. The Ki 100 will enter limited production by December, perhaps 200 aircraft before war's end. They will perform admirably within their limitations. They will not prevent American bombers from incinerating Japanese cities. They will not contest airspace above invasion beaches. They will not change any outcome that matters. The ethical dimension torments him. Every pilot climbing into a Ki 100 cockpit will believe Japanese engineering finally answered the American challenge. They will trust their aircraft's capabilities, fight with confidence born from propaganda about superior design. And they will die, not from lack of courage but from mathematical certainty. He is sending young men into aerial combat with equipment categorically inferior to enemies, while telling them they possess competitive advantage. Is this leadership or murder? Lieutenant Matsuda confronts this dilemma differently. He petitions for permission to brief combat pilots honestly about performance gaps, to train them in survival tactics rather than victory tactics. His proposal is rejected immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Fujita writes scathing rebuke. Such defeatist briefings destroy morale, undermine fighting spirit, constitute psychological surrender before battle begins. Matsuda responds with data. Survival rates of pilots who understand aircraft limitations versus those who believe propaganda. His logic is impeccable. His report is classified, buried, forgotten. Major Endo, the test pilot, stops writing honest assessments. His July reports praised Ki 100 handling while noting performance deficiencies. His August reports emphasize strengths while minimizing weaknesses. His September reports describe the fighter as fully competitive with enemy types. He has not changed his professional opinion. He has concluded that truth serves no purpose when action cannot follow knowledge. Better that pilots believe their aircraft adequate than fly into combat knowing doom is certain. The lie is kinder than reality. He tells himself this while watching young pilots, boys really, barely 20 years old, walk confidently toward aircraft that will become their coffins. Yamashita watches this moral decay with clarity he cannot articulate. They have become complicit in a system that values short-term morale over long-term survival. that prioritizes comfortable falsehood over devastating truth. The Mustang taught them about aerodynamics and industrial capacity, but it also revealed something darker: how institutions preserve themselves through managed delusion, how hierarchies demand conformity to comfortable narratives, how truth becomes casualty when reality proves too painful to acknowledge. October 1944. American B-29 Superfortress bombers begin systematic raids on Japanese industrial targets. The strategic calculus behind these raids demonstrates sophistication that mirrors the Mustang's design philosophy: comprehensive systems thinking rather than isolated tactical brilliance. The B-29s do not merely drop bombs. They execute coordinated campaigns targeting specific industrial nodes: steel mills, aluminum refineries, ball-bearing factories, aircraft engine plants, transportation hubs, each raid calibrated to create cascading failures throughout Japan's manufacturing ecosystem. The Ki-100 production program illustrates these cascading effects with cruel precision. November delivery schedule calls for 40 aircraft. Actual production, 18. Why? Aluminum shortage because bauxite shipments from Southeast Asia stopped. American submarines now sink 90% of maritime traffic. Precision bearings unavailable because bearing factory in Osaka destroyed. No replacement capacity exists. Propeller production delayed because electric furnaces in Nagoya lack coal. Rail transport bombed. Coal mines in Kyushu inaccessible. Engine production sporadic because skilled machinists conscripted for infantry. Labor pool depleted. Training programs abandoned. Colonel Yamashita reviews production reports with mounting horror. They are not losing ability to build Ki-100s. They are losing ability to build anything. The industrial infrastructure that sustained Japan's military power is being systematically dismantled from above, while resource exhaustion undermines it from below. The captured Mustang in Hangar 7 becomes almost mockery. They finally understand its design secrets precisely when capacity to apply that knowledge evaporates. The American strategy reveals planning depth that Japan never matched. Every B-29 raid is escorted by Mustangs flying from captured airbases in Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Philippines. The fighter escorts do not merely protect bombers. They establish air superiority that makes all other military operations possible. Ground forces advance under umbrella of complete aerial dominance. Naval operations proceed without fear of aerial attack. Supply lines operate unmolested. The Mustang is not weapon. It is key that unlocks combined arms warfare on scale Japan cannot contest. Captured intelligence reports reveal Americans understood this relationship between industrial capacity and military effectiveness before war began. Their pre-war planning documents calculated production capacities, resource requirements, logistical frameworks necessary for sustained multi-year conflict. Japan's planning assumed short war, decisive early victories, negotiated settlement before American industrial superiority manifested. Both sides accurately assessed American material advantages. One side built strategy around that reality. The other side hoped it would not matter. Hope was not strategy. Wishful thinking was not war planning. And now the bill comes due, paid in aluminum and blood, in factories burning and pilots dying, in dreams of parity drowning under weight of industrial reality, too massive to deny. December 1944. The first operational Ki-100s reach combat squadrons. Pilots report favorably on handling characteristics, engine reliability, armament effectiveness. These positive assessments feel like eulogies delivered at funerals, praising deceased's virtues while avoiding mention of death itself. Major Endo flies combat missions in Ki-100, engages B-29 formations over Tokyo. He achieves 3 confirmed bomber kills over 2 months. Respectable by any measure. The strategic impact is nil. For every B-29 he shoots down, 20 more complete their missions. American production replaces losses within weeks. Japanese production cannot replace his aircraft if damaged, cannot train new pilots if he dies. The mathematics of attrition warfare are brutal and simple. America produces 16,000 fighters in 1944. Japan produces 5,000. American fighters are categorically superior, faster, higher flying, longer ranged. Even if Japanese pilots achieved parity in skill and tactics, which they do not, the numerical disparity guarantees defeat. Add qualitative inferiority to quantitative disadvantage and the outcome becomes not uncertain but predetermined. Colonel Yamashita knows this. His superiors know this. Yet the theater continues. Production meetings discussing delivery schedules, training programs preparing new pilots, tactical briefings planning operations. Everyone performing roles in drama whose ending was written before curtain rose. Lieutenant Matsuda stops attending coordination meetings. He spends days in Hangar 7, sitting beneath the captured Mustang, filling notebooks with observations about the philosophical dimensions of technological competition. Americans did not win through superior courage or greater sacrifice, he writes. They won through superior systems thinking, recognizing that modern warfare is industrial production contest dressed in military uniforms. They built not just better aircraft but better factories, better research institutions, better educational systems, better resource allocation mechanisms. We focused on warrior spirit while they focused on systems engineering. We are samurai facing machine guns, and honor provides no protection against mathematics. His commander reads these philosophical musings, files them without comment. What response exists? Matsuda is correct. His correctness changes nothing. The war continues regardless of intellectual clarity about its outcome. Men still die daily. Cities still burn nightly. The institutional machinery grinds forward because stopping requires acknowledging truths more devastating than continued motion. Better to maintain fiction of strategic viability than confront reality of comprehensive defeat. The Mustang sitting in their hangar is evidence, testimony, proof. But institutions excel at ignoring evidence when acceptance requires too much psychological reconstruction. They studied the Mustang. They learned its secrets. They discovered those secrets arrived too late, revealed too much, demanded more than their civilization could provide. January 1945. The strategic situation deteriorates beyond any possibility of reversal. American forces land on Luzon, cutting Japan from Southeast Asian resources. B-29 raids intensify. Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, all experience firestorms that kill tens of thousands, destroy industrial capacity, shatter civilian morale. The Ki-100 program continues because bureaucratic momentum outweighs strategic logic. Engineers design improvements that will never be manufactured. Production quotas are set that cannot be met. Deployment plans are drafted for aircraft that will not exist. Colonel Yamashita receives orders to brief Emperor Hirohito's military advisors on advanced fighter development. He prepares presentation emphasizing Ki-100 capabilities while carefully avoiding comparisons with American fighters. The briefing is theater. Everyone in room knows the truth, but speaking it aloud violates protocol. He describes technical specifications, production schedules, projected deployment timelines. The advisors nod, ask procedural questions, express confidence. No one mentions the Mustang. No one asks whether new fighters can actually contest American air superiority. The performance follows script written by institutional necessity rather than tactical reality. After the briefing, a senior admiral takes Yamashita aside, speaks with unexpected candor. We are not asking you to win the war with aircraft. We are asking you to maintain appearance of continued resistance. The political situation requires that Japan demonstrates fighting spirit, while diplomatic channels explore settlement terms. Your fighters need not achieve victory. They need only prevent perception of total collapse. This honesty, delivered in whisper between official proceedings, contains more truth than 1,000 tactical reports. The war's military outcome is determined. What remains is managing the narrative, preserving dignity in defeat, creating conditions for negotiated surrender rather than unconditional annihilation. Yamashita returns to Tachikawa carrying this knowledge like lead weight. His engineers work 16-hour shifts designing improvements to aircraft that serve symbolic, rather than military purposes. Test pilots risk death evaluating performance characteristics that no longer matter strategically. Factory workers labor under bombing raids producing fighters whose deployment will not alter war's trajectory, and he must maintain their motivation, their belief that effort matters, their commitment to mission whose success is measured in political optics, rather than battlefield outcomes. The Mustang still sits in Hangar 7, mostly ignored now. Initially, it was mystery to solve, challenge to overcome, enemy to understand. Now it is artifact, memorial, evidence of the chasm between aspiration and capability. Young engineers occasionally study it, less frequently as months progress. What remains to learn? They know why it flies faster, climbs higher, ranges farther. They know why they cannot replicate it. Knowledge without power to act is burden rather than enlightenment. March 1945. Operation Meeting House, the firebombing of Tokyo, kills 100,000 people in single night. Tachikawa Airfield sits outside the primary destruction zone, but close enough to see flames that turn night into crimson daylight, to smell smoke that carries ash of human remains. The Ki-100s based there scramble to intercept B-29 formations. They shoot down 14 bombers out of 334. The raid succeeds completely. The industrial and psychological damage is catastrophic. The fighter's tactical success is strategically irrelevant. Major Endo lands after his fourth sortie, climbs from cockpit, walks to hangar's edge. He watches Tokyo burn, thinks about the Mustang they studied, about the Americans who designed it. Those engineers never saw combat, never faced enemy fire, never felt aluminum shudder under machine gun impacts. Yet they contributed more to victory than any pilot's courage. They understood that modern warfare is industrial production contest, mediated through equipment performance. The side that builds better tools wins, regardless of warrior spirit animating inferior weapons. This realization does not diminish soldiers' sacrifice. It reveals that sacrifice, however noble, cannot overcome categorical material disadvantage. Lieutenant Matsuda has stopped coming to the airfield entirely. He submitted letter requesting transfer to any non-aviation duty. Request denied. His technical expertise is too valuable. So he appears minimally, performs required duties mechanically, spends evenings writing documents he knows will never be published. These writings explore the philosophical implications of technological competition between civilizations. We believed in qualitative superiority of spirit, he writes. Americans believed in quantitative superiority of production. Both beliefs were tested empirically. The evidence is unambiguous. Spirit matters, but not more than steel. Will matters, but not more than aluminum. Courage matters, but not more than petroleum. We lost not because we were cowards, but because we confused categories. We brought spiritual weapons to material fight. Colonel Yamashita reads these writings, finds them brilliant and pointless. Matsuda has achieved intellectual clarity about processes that render his insights irrelevant. Understanding why you are losing does not stop the loss. Knowing you were strategically mistaken from war's beginning does not rewind time. Recognizing opponents' systematic advantages does not create compensating advantages from vacuum. Wisdom arrived too late is indistinguishable from ignorance in its practical effects. The only question remaining is how to endure the remaining months with dignity, how to preserve something worth rebuilding from ruins that grow larger daily. April 1945. Germany surrenders. The full weight of Allied industrial power can now concentrate on Japan. The strategic mathematics become even more impossible. American production accelerates. Fighters, bombers, transports, all produced in numbers Japan cannot count, let alone contest. The B-29 raids transition from military targets to systematic destruction of urban areas. Yokohama, Kawasaki, Nagoya, city after city burns. The Ki-100s still fly, still fight, still occasionally shoot down bombers. The raids continue unabated. The final lesson arrives without announcement, embedded in accumulated data that Colonel Yamashita reviews in his office. He creates charts tracking fighter performance against B-29 formations. January through April, Ki-100 pilots achieved 247 confirmed bomber kills, impressive by historical standards. During same period, Americans lost 1.8% of bomber sorties to all causes: fighters, anti-aircraft fire, mechanical failure combined. The loss rate is sustainable indefinitely. American production replaces losses faster than Japan inflicts them. Meanwhile, Japanese pilot losses exceed replacement rate by factor of 3. The attrition equation points toward single inevitable conclusion: eventual elimination of Japanese air defense capability through simple exhaustion. He studies the Mustang data differently now, not as enemy to defeat but as case study and systematic thinking. Every design decision in that aircraft reflects integrated strategy, where tactical performance serves operational objectives, which support strategic goals, aligned with industrial capabilities and resource availability. The Americans did not ask, "What is the best fighter we can imagine?" They asked, "What is the best fighter we can mass produce with available resources that serves our strategic requirements?" The constraints shaped design from inception. Constraints were not obstacles to overcome through force of will. They were parameters to optimize within through intelligent engineering. Japan's approach was inverse. Designers imagined ideal performance, then struggled to manufacture it. Strategic requirements changed faster than design cycles. Resource constraints were treated as temporary obstacles rather than permanent parameters. Industrial capabilities were assumed rather than evaluated. The result was aircraft that looked impressive in specifications but could not be produced in numbers, maintained in field conditions, or employed within realistic logistical frameworks. They designed for abstract excellence. Americans designed for practical effectiveness at scale. Both philosophies produced fighters. One philosophy produced victory. Yamashita closes his notebooks, locks them in safe. These insights might be valuable to whoever rebuilds Japan's aviation industry after war, if anyone survives with interest in such reconstruction, if industrial capacity remains for rebuilding, if occupation forces permit military aviation development. Too many uncertainties. All he knows certainly is that current war is lost, was probably lost before it began, will end with Japan's comprehensive defeat and his own analysis buried in ruins. August 6, 1945. News reaches Tachikawa that Hiroshima has been destroyed by single bomb of unprecedented type. August 9th, Nagasaki follows. August 15th, Emperor announces surrender. The war ends not through graduated attrition but through technology so advanced it renders all previous calculations obsolete. The atomic bomb is Mustang taken to ultimate conclusion. Victory through systematic application of scientific knowledge, industrial capacity, and organizational competence that Japan could not match in any domain. Colonel Yamashita stands in Hangar 7 before the captured Mustang for final time. The aircraft has not moved in 16 months. Dust covers its silver skin. The tires have deflated, but it remains intact, beautiful, perfect in its engineering synthesis. He thinks about the hundreds of hours spent studying it, measuring it, trying to understand it. They learned everything about how it worked. They learned nothing about how to replicate the civilization that produced it. The fundamental error was categorical. They treated the Mustang as technical problem. Copy the wing shape, replicate the engine, match the performance. But the Mustang was not technical problem. It was manifestation of entire industrial scientific system that Japan fundamentally lacked. Copying the output without possessing the inputs that produced it was impossible. Like trying to write poetry in language you do not speak. You can imitate form without capturing meaning. Lieutenant Matsuda appears beside him, notebook under arm as always. They stand in silence, two engineers contemplating evidence of their civilization's inadequacy. Finally, Matsuda speaks. We confused the weapon with the hand that made it. We thought if we could understand the sword, we could match the swordsmith. But swordsmithing is not learned from studying swords. It is learned through decades of practice, institutional knowledge, cultural values, economic resources. The Mustang was endpoint of process we never underwent. We tried to skip directly to conclusion without following the reasoning. Yamashita nods slowly. What should we have done differently? Acknowledged reality earlier. Admitted we could not match American industrial capacity. Built strategy around our actual capabilities rather than wished-for parity. Avoided war we could not win. That was political decision, not engineering. All engineering is ultimately political. We failed not because our engineers were inferior, but because our political leadership demanded impossible outcomes, and our culture made acknowledging impossibility unacceptable. The Mustang did not defeat us. We defeated ourselves by refusing to see clearly. They leave the hangar together, turning off lights behind them. The Mustang disappears into darkness, secret intact. Decades later, historians would analyze Japan's wartime aviation development with perspective unavailable to its participants. The captured P-51 Mustang became artifact of broader tragedy, not merely military defeat, but failure of institutions to adapt when reality contradicted ideology. The engineers at Tachikawa understood the Mustang's technical superiority almost immediately. They reported it through channels that required such information. Their reports were received, acknowledged, filed, and the machinery of war continued grinding forward, unable or unwilling to incorporate insights that demanded too much strategic adjustment. The Ki-100 fighter eventually gained reputation as one of Japan's finest aircraft. Excellent handling, reliable engine, effective armament. This reputation was accurate and irrelevant. It was finest fighter Japanese industry could produce in 1945, and it was insufficient for the war they were fighting. Excellence within severe constraints remains constrained. The margin between very good and truly exceptional determines outcomes when opponents possess equal courage and greater resources. Colonel Yamashita survived the war, worked in post-war reconstruction, helped establish Japan aviation electronics industry. He never spoke publicly about the Mustang project. His private papers, discovered after his death in 1987, reveal man tormented by clarity he could not act upon. "We understood," he wrote in 1946 journal entry. "Understanding changed nothing. Knowledge without power is burden, not advantage. I knew we were losing while being unable to alter the trajectory. I understood the war was unwinnable while being required to act as if victory remained possible. This was not stupidity or delusion. It was institutional momentum that overpowers individual comprehension." Lieutenant Matsuda became professor of aeronautical engineering at Tokyo University. His lectures always included case study on the P-51 Mustang, not as enemy aircraft but as exemplar of integrated systems design. He taught generations of students that technical excellence begins with honest assessment of capabilities, constraints, and objectives. That systems must be designed for reality, not aspiration. That understanding opponents' advantages is prerequisite for developing compensating strategies. His students would help build Japan's post-war aviation industry into global competitor. The captured Mustang was destroyed in the war's final months, burned when American forces occupied Tachikawa. No photographs survive. But its lessons remained, encoded in memory of those who studied it, who recognized too late what it represented, who learned that technological competition between nations is won not through individual brilliance, but through systematic cultivation of knowledge, resources, and institutions that make brilliance possible at scale. They arrived as conquerors of air. They departed as witnesses to what comprehensive industrial capacity, properly organized and strategically applied, could create and destroy.